Fear is a natural human emotion, one that we all experience at some point in our lives. It can arise from failure, rejection, uncertainty, or even the possibility of success. But fear is not meant to stop us. It's meant to awaken something within us. It can either paralyze us or propel us. The difference lies in our response. Do we let fear dictate our path, or do we stand up and fight back? Fear is one of the most basic and universal emotions experienced by human beings. From the moment we are born, we are introduced to fear through the unknowns that surround us. It alerts us to danger, helps us respond to threats, and in some cases can even save our lives. It's a deeply ingrained survival mechanism that has served humanity since ancient times. The problem arises, however, when fear is no longer responding to real threats, but is instead triggered by imagined outcomes, negative thoughts, or emotional wounds. Understanding that fear is natural helps us remove the shame associated with it. It allows us to accept that we are not weak for feeling afraid. We are simply human. Many people misunderstand fear as a sign of inability or failure. They associate fear with weakness or cowardice, believing that those who feel afraid are somehow less capable than those who appear confident. This perception can become a dangerous limitation, causing people to hide their fears or suppress their emotions rather than deal with them honestly. In reality, even the most courageous individuals feel fear. The difference is not in the presence of fear. Recognizing that fear is an emotion, not an identity. Fear, from the essence of that's called aphrosis, not certainty. Not it. Fear becomes a limitation when we allow it to dictate our choices and control our actions. When we refuse to take a step forward because we are afraid of rejection, or when we avoid pursuing our dreams because failure seems too painful, fear has gone beyond emotion. It has become a prison. Instead of guiding us to safety, it keeps us trapped in patterns of irrational fear. Rational fear protects us. Irrational fear prevents us. Only then can we begin to move in freedom instead of restriction. Acknowledging fear as a natural part of life doesn't mean surrendering to it. On the contrary, it empowers us to face it head on. When we accept that fear is an inevitable part of any journey toward growth, we stop trying to eliminate it and start learning to work through it. Instead of shrinking in the presence of fear, we begin to ask ourselves, what is this fear trying to teach me? What opportunity lies on the other side of this emotion? When we approach fear with curiosity instead of judgment, it loses its power to paralyze us. It becomes a stepping stone, not a stumbling block. Fear finds its greatest strength in the comfort zone. The comfort zone is a mental space where routines are predictable, risks are minimized, and outcomes are mostly known. While it may feel safe and secure, the comfort zone can also be a silent killer of potential. Fear thrives in this zone because it convinces you that stepping out is dangerous or unnecessary. It whispers lies that the discomfort of trying something new is too overwhelming, or that the pain of failure is too great to bear. So we stay where we are. You know that as long as you remain comfortable, you won't threaten its hold on your life. You want access to knowledge and success. As a rule, I have no knowledge. Over time, the comfort zone becomes more of a cage than a sanctuary. What was once a place of rest becomes a place of retreat and hiding. Fear plants seeds of complacency in the comfort zone, making you doubt your dreams, ignore your purpose, and delay your goals. It masks itself as wisdom or caution, persuading you that staying where you are is the smarter decision. But deep down, the heart longs for more. The soul is not satisfied with mediocrity. There's an inner voice that keeps urging you to go beyond, to grow, to stretch. And fear's only defense is to keep you locked in the illusion that it's safer to do nothing than to try something new. Living within your comfort zone for too long causes stagnation. It slows down your progress and diminishes your hunger for growth. When fear dominates this zone, you begin to settle for good enough instead of striving for excellence. You start to accept limitations as facts rather than challenges to be overcome. Opportunities are missed not because you weren't capable, but because fear convinced you that you weren't ready. Dreams are abandoned not because they weren't real, but because fear kept you grounded in false security. Eventually, your comfort zone becomes a place where you watch others grow while you remain stuck, always wondering what might have been. Breaking free from the comfort zone means confronting the fear that holds it together. It means choosing to feel uncomfortable in the short term for the sake of long-term growth. It means doing the hard things, starting that project, speaking up, moving forward, despite the trembling in your heart. Fear will always resist this kind of movement because it cannot survive where courage takes root. When you leave your comfort zone, fear begins to weaken. With each bold step you take, you reclaim your power and remind yourself that you are not here to play small. You were designed to grow, to rise, and to live beyond the boundaries fear tries to set. Fear loses its grip when we take intentional steps forward. It feeds on inaction, growing stronger the longer we remain idle. Many people think that by avoiding what they fear, they're staying safe or buying time. But in truth, avoidance is the oxygen that keeps fear alive. The more you avoid speaking, showing up, or trying, the more fear embeds itself into your daily life. It builds mental walls and convinces you those walls are protection, but they're not protecting you. They are limiting you. True safety comes not from avoiding fear, but from confronting it directly through decisive and repeated action. Action is the antidote to fear. Even the smallest step in the direction of your fear begins to dismantle its control. For example, if you fear public speaking, waiting until you feel perfectly confident will only prolong your fear, but choosing to speak anyway, despite your nerves, begins to rewire your response. Fear relies on the expectation of failure or discomfort. But when you take action and survive, even thrive, it begins to lose credibility. Every time you act in spite of fear, you collect evidence that you are stronger, more capable, and braver than fear wants you to believe. It's through doing, not waiting, that you break free. Avoidance can be deceptively comforting because it gives the illusion of control. You might convince yourself that you'll act when the time is right or when you feel ready. But these conditions are usually rooted in fear rather than wisdom. Fear often disguises itself in delay, postponing your dreams indefinitely under the guise of preparation. But readiness isn't something that comes before action. It often comes as a result of action. You grow into boldness by choosing to act, not by sitting back and hoping it magically appears. By consistently taking steps, even shaky ones, you begin to build momentum, and momentum is the enemy of fear. Choosing action over avoidance is not a one-time event. It is a daily decision. Every day presents moments where fear will try to pull you back into hiding. But the more you practice acting in faith instead of fear, the more natural it becomes. You start to build a habit of courage. The discomfort never disappears entirely, but your tolerance for it increases. You realize that fear doesn't have to disappear for you to move forward. It just has to be ignored long enough for your actions to take center stage. In this way, action not only defeats fear, it replaces it with strengths, confidence, and resilience that avoidance could never offer. Every time we confront fear head-on, we engage in a process that develops our inner strength. Courage is not something we are born with. It is something we build through repetition, decision, and resilience. Facing fear doesn't mean we eliminate it completely. Rather, it means we choose to stand firm despite its presence. The more frequently we face our fears, the more confident we become in our ability to overcome them. Each moment of bravery, no matter how small, adds another brick to the foundation of our courage. Over time, what once seemed terrifying becomes manageable, and what once made us tremble now strengthens us. Fear presents us with a choice: either retreat into what's familiar or advance into what's possible. When you confront a fear and come out stronger on the other side, your self-encouragement begins to change the... When you confront a fear and come out stronger on the other side, your self and your fear begins to change. You no longer see yourself as someone who is limited by fear, but as someone who is capable of breaking through it. This change in perception is crucial for continued development and lasting transformation. Personal growth doesn't come from comfort, ease, or certainty. It comes from challenge, resistance, and perseverance. Fear is one of life's greatest challenges, and those who rise to face it often discover hidden capacities they never knew they possessed. They find endurance they didn't think they had, wisdom they hadn't tapped into, and strength they never thought they could carry. Facing fear teaches you more about yourself than any book, lesson, or theory ever could. It reveals your priorities, your limits, your vulnerabilities, and most importantly, your potential. That process of revelation and refinement is what forges true personal growth. May ani tudaran barnagati. Then may you welcome. As we continue to face our fears, we become more emotionally and spiritually mature. We learn not to be ruled by impulse or emotion, but to respond with intention and clarity. Fear loses its power as we grow in discipline and self-control. We start to see fear not as an enemy, but as a trainer, an unwelcome but effective instructor that forces us to build spiritual and emotional muscles. With each confrontation, we become less reactive and more grounded, less anxious and more assured. In facing fear repeatedly, we not only become more courageous, we also become wiser.
Stop sama laba-laba.
More self-synchronized than you oppose the cues matter. Alexander Elier. Your need you can be read upon the growth volume. Fear has a cunning way of exaggerating reality. It doesn't merely warn us of danger. It paints elaborate pictures of worst-case scenarios. It whispers lies into our minds, distorting what is true and magnifying what could go wrong. For example, fear may convince you that if you try something new, you will fail miserably, be ridiculed, and never recover. Yet in truth, the likelihood of those outcomes is often minimal. Even if you do face setbacks, they are rarely as catastrophic as fear predicts. This distortion keeps people locked in place, believing in threats that may not even exist. Fear lies to preserve its own influence over your decisions and direction. The more we listen to the voice of fear, the more it reshapes our reality. What once was a simple challenge becomes a monstrous impossibility. A conversation turns into a confrontation. A step forward becomes a leap into danger. And a temporary setback is seen as a permanent failure. Fear twists facts, feeds off our insecurities, and draws strength from our imagination. It uses half-truths and past wounds to weave convincing narratives that paralyze us. We begin to interpret opportunities as traps, view people as threats, and see ourselves as incapable. This isn't reality. It's fear's false narrative, and it blinds us to what is truly possible. To overcome fear, we must learn to challenge its lies with truth. That begins by becoming aware of the thoughts we're allowing to guide our lives. When fear tells you that you can't do something, ask yourself, is this fear or fact? If it's fear, then its words must be tested. Replace its lies with truths rooted in your experience, your faith, and your identity. If fear says you are going to fail, remind yourself of times you succeeded despite your doubts. If fear says it exposes it for what it really is, a manipulator, not a master. My experiences assume what made you. feel. Fear may speak loudly, but it is not the voice of wisdom or authority. It thrives in secrecy and silence, but when we shine the light of truth upon it, its grip begins to loosen. One of the most powerful things you can do is expose your fear. Speak it out loud, write it down, examine it, and confront it. The lies it tells can only survive when they remain unchallenged. Once you call them out and replace them with truth, you begin to reclaim your power. The more often you do this, the more skilled you become at discerning between the false alarms of fear and the real voice of wisdom. In this way, the lies of fear no longer control you. They teach you how to listen more clearly to what's real. Faith is the foundation that allows us to face fear with confidence. It is not merely a vague hope that things will get better, but a deep-rooted trust in something greater than ourselves, whether it be God, a purpose, or a vision for our future. Fear operates in the realm of uncertainty and doubt, while faith anchors us in hope and assurance. When fear says, "You are not alone," faith reminds us that there is a greater plan. While faith gives us the strength to believe, persistence gives us the strength to continue. Fear may not disappear after the first step of courage. It often lingers, hoping to wear us down. This is where persistence becomes vital. Persistence is the refusal to give up, even when fear is loud, obstacles are real, and progress feels slow. It is the commitment to keep showing up, keep trying, and keep believing no matter how hard it gets. Fear thrives when we pause. Persistence weakens it when we press on. The more consistently we push forward, the more familiar courage becomes and the less intimidating fear feels. Over time, persistence builds resilience, and resilience becomes a lifestyle of quiet, unwavering strength. The relationship between faith and persistence is powerful because they work together to counteract fear's strategy. Fear seeks to isolate, discourage, and paralyze, but faith speaks life into our thoughts, while persistence moves our feet forward. Faith helps us see the unseen, to trust that the breakthrough is coming, even when the evidence. Together, they silence fear not just in theory, but in action. Every step taken in faith and every decision made with persistence weakens fear's authority in our lives. Moreover, these two weapons, faith and persistence, not only help us conquer fear, but they also transform us in the process. They mold our character, deepen our endurance, and expand our capacity to handle future challenges. Fear may never fully go away, but with faith as our compass, and persistence as our engine, we can keep moving forward despite it. We learn to navigate uncertainty with courage, knowing that setbacks are temporary and growth is inevitable. In time, fear becomes less of a threat and more of a signal that something important is at stake, and that we have every tool we need to face it head on. Deep within every human being lies an untapped reservoir of strength, resilience, and courage. Yet fear often masks this inner power, convincing us that we are weak, incapable, or too broken to move forward. It magnifies our flaws and minimizes our potential. It reminds us of our failures but conveniently forgets our victories. However, the truth is that fear can only operate effectively when we forget who we are. We were created with strength that far exceeds the threats we imagine. Within us lies the power to persevere, to rise from hardship, and to transform pain into purpose. We are not defined by our fears. We are defined by our ability to rise above them. Mira, what fear wants most is for you to forget your authority. When you stop and recall all along, this realization is not about pride. It's about truth. It's about recognizing that the same strength that carried you through the past is still within you. You don't need to be fearless to move forward. You just need to remember that your power is greater than your fear. This power is not just emotional or mental, it's also spiritual. There's a divine strength that resides in every individual, a spark that ignites when you choose courage over comfort. This power is activated the moment you stop running from fear and start walking toward purpose. It shows itself when you speak up despite shaking hands, when you take the leap despite uncertainty, and when you choose hope over despair. Your fear might scream loudly, but your power speaks with quiet confidence. And every time you trust it, it grows. With each bold step, you reclaim more ground from fear and reinforce the truth that fear cannot overpower someone who knows their worth. So, the journey of life is not about never facing fear. It's about learning to walk in power in the midst of it. You don't have to wait until the fear is gone to act. Your power becomes visible through the action you take despite fear. Fear may be a part of your story, but it does not get to write the ending. You are the author. You have the ability to choose courage, to speak truth, and to fight forward. You may feel afraid, but you are not powerless. In fact, the very presence of fear is proof that there's something valuable inside you worth protecting. That's why fear shows up, to keep you from discovering your true strength. But once you tap into that strength, fear has no choice but to back down. So today make a choice. Choose to stand up to the fear that has kept you silent, small, or stagnant. Choose to believe in the strength within you rather than the lies around you. Fear may visit, but it doesn't have to stay. It may speak, but it doesn't have to decide. You have the power to rise, to grow, and to walk boldly into the life you were meant to live. Let every step forward be a declaration that fear does not own you. You are stronger, braver, and far more capable than it ever imagined. The fight with your fear is not just about defeating it. It's about discovering who you truly are beyond it.